Thanks for having me in this podcast. So my name is Isabel Nyo, and I'm a head of engineering at Atlassian. Atlassian is a software company that develops collaboration products like Jira, Jira Service Management, and Confluence to unleash the potential of every team in all industry. And as for myself personally, my personal mission is to enable tech professionals to achieve the next level of leadership, impact, and happiness in their career via resources to an inspiration. And I really love sharing my knowledge with others, and hence I'm on this podcast today. Sure, thanks. I really like the mention of the soft and hard metric because for me, I think there are two types of metrics that we can measure when it comes to the performance of a software engineering team. The first one is the quantitative metrics that we are all familiar with, or the hard metrics, and they are very easy to measure, as in you can obtain these scientifically. But then the second type of metrics that is important to measure, but a lot harder to measure, is the qualitative metrics. So let me start with the quantitative metric, and a lot of you have already mentioned things like cycle time, time to delivery, what's the time to PR, time to deployment, like different stages, and also the velocity, how many story points are being completed in a sprint, whether there's like a stability in the team, how many incident reliability and things like that. So these are very important to measure and specific for software engineering teams. And the second type of metrics that I mentioned earlier, which we are going to dive a little bit deeper into, is the qualitative metric. So the team is very productive, they are busy with stuff, they deliver consistently, they have really good story point. But do they actually add value? How do we find out? So qualitative metrics usually can be measured by speaking to people. People can be customer or other employee or other stakeholder in the team. And I've used things like Net Promoter Score, so NPS, to get the sentiment of the customer on what has been delivered. So there is a good measure for a software engineering team because they can be busy with many things, but are these things actually translating to business value? And that is the important thing to measure. And I also encourage my engineering manager to get feedback about their software engineers on the ground on how they work and what are the behaviors that they have been establishing. And I think this is important because high performer will quickly leave the team when they find there's a low performer who is not being held accountable, or there's a sub quality that is being accepted by their manager. So it's also important to measure these. And at the end of the day, I believe that having all this data and measurement is good, but the best thing comes from really acting on them. So self-reflection, reflecting on what has been measured, whether there's things that need to be improved, is the key to creating a high-performing team. So I truly believe that the responsibility of an engineering manager, whether they are a frontline engineering manager or a delivery manager, head of engineering, or a CTO, is to create an environment that allows for ownership and self-drivenness. So what this means is the environment. What's the environment? We need to have the right people in the right roles. Not everyone is going to excel in certain roles. So we need to create an environment where we have the right people, right role, and there needs to be effective ways of working. We don't want people to step onto each other's toes, but we also want people to have autonomy. So how do we create that kind of thing? And it's super important. And lastly, it's also important to have a shared understanding around what success means to the group. And this shared understanding is important. So personally, I found that in my management journey, there are 4 principles that have worked for me when I take over a new team, or when I initiate a new team, or when I start a new team. And to make it easy for everyone, let's call them 4C. So the first C is clarity and context. You need to provide this clarity and context as a leader or the engineering manager of a team so that everyone knows where they are going, where everyone needs to head toward. So that's the first C, clarity and context. And it's the responsibility of the engineering leader to provide this. You can't expect everyone on the ground to work hard, take ownership if they don't even know where they are going as a group. So that's the first C. Second C is courage. And I choose this as courage instead of confidence because I found that sometimes you might not have confident and confident to do things, or confident to take ownership, or confident to take initiative. But by taking that action from a place of courage, you actually build that confidence. So it's very important for me personally and for the people that I look after to make sure that they are courageous to take risks and they are okay with failure. Like Elijah just said, like failure is okay, but we need to make sure that there's certain boundary as well. And this is where the clarity comes in. And the third C is creativity. Sometimes I think in big company, we get a little bit scared to do things and we just do things because we are told to do. But we need to, as leader, we need to encourage creativity, especially in this environment where lots of things are changing in the technology landscape, lots of different things happening, AI is coming. We need to have creative thinking and creativity to think about things in a different perspective. Maybe some things can be done in a different way. It doesn't have to be the same way or same proven methods that we need to use every time. And make it fun, make it rewarding, because at the end of the day, you want to have a fulfilling career, right? Like you don't want to just come into work and just do whatever that you are told to do. And this, when things are fun, rewarding, and there's clarity, people will naturally take accountability and ownership. And the last C is care. And this is super important because at the end of the day, we are all human and we are doing something for other human, right? Customer, like whether it's about building software products or doing something, creating certain things. So it's important for us to have empathy for each other, be kind to each other, and also to the customer. Not everyone is going to have the same value. Not everyone is going to think about things the same way. But if we have empathy and kindness to each other, we can achieve great things. And those are really important in my opinion, the 4C.
Awesome.
When I first became a manager about 15 years ago, I hated it. I hated it because I really enjoy coding and I like doing things, creating things by myself, not for myself, but by myself. And I took pride in what I did. But then because I was successful in my software engineering career as an engineer, I got promoted, or I chased after this next level, which is the management level. And I was like Ben said, suddenly responsible for other people. I don't know how they work. I don't know whether they think the same way as I did. And I don't know anything about management. And I actually went back to individual contributor role after a year of being a manager. And if I look back now, I think the reason why I felt so out of place was because I didn't know what the expectation of the role was. The expectation of the role was not for me to code 5 times more because I have 5 people. It's more about being a multiplier. So the mindset change is needed, understanding what is the expectation of the role. You don't have to be on the front line solving every problem as a manager or someone responsible for the team, small team or big team, but being there for the people, giving them guidance when necessary, is very important. So now these days, when I have people who wants to move into management, my first reaction is to understand why. Are you doing this because you want to level up in your career? Is it what you really needed? And they might not have the answer, and it's okay. So it's important for them to understand what's the expectation of the role, think about it. And after you think about it and you still want to go for it, yes, I will support you, but you need to allow me to coach you as well. And sometimes I've had people who say, I want to become a manager or engineering manager because I'm good with people. Okay, it's good that you're good with people, but there's a responsibility part to it as well. And you can't just, as a manager, you have responsibility. You can't just be a nice and lovely person all the time, right? Sometimes you need to have tough conversation. You need to hold people accountable. So these are the things that I try to explain to people who wants to move into the management. I will coach them, I will hold them accountable, but they also need to pull their weight and understand what's expected. And management is not for everyone, and it's okay. If someone decide after a while that they don't want to become a manager, they are much better off being an individual contributor, becoming an architect or whatever, it's fine. It's good. Do what you like to do and do your best, because I always think life is too short. Don't just become a manager because you think it's like the next big thing for your career. Cool. So you are not going to like my answer, because I kept thinking about it. Is it important? How important? And it depends, right? The answer is it depends. There's no clear answer. And it depends on the industry that you work in and the size and maturity of the company. So if we are talking about startup and software company, where most of us are in, it's super important to be grounded in the business and technology strategy when you are talking to engineers. So I would generally encourage engineers to be aware of what they are building, what's the strategy, where we want to go for in the next 2 to 3 years, not too long, because technology landscape is always changing, but at least the next 18 months to 2 years, they should be aware of the vision. When they are creating like solution, they should be considering what the future vision look like, and it's important to motivate them that way as well, especially with this new generation. I don't know what's the generation, maybe Generation Z. They want to have this purpose in their work. Like they want to do something, come to work because they are fulfilling some sort of purpose. And if you don't motivate them with this strategy, then they will quickly lose their interest in the role and what they are doing. So it is super important for certain type of company, and especially if you are hiring people who are new in the workforce. And the other thing that I was thinking of also was, not everyone can be motivated with this kind of strategy. Like I mentioned earlier, everyone is different, right? Some people just want to be excited by the latest and greatest technology, use these, doesn't matter what the business goal is, and it's fine. But as leader, it depends on what sort of environment we want to create. Do we want to create a team of product engineers? Then we need to try and find these kind of people and filter them during interviews. So this is also important as well. It's not possible to try and put a square peg in a round hole, right? If you are looking for certain type of engineer, try and filter them as early as possible and try and attract them as much as possible. But if this is not important to your organization because of some other reason, then you don't need to try and talk about it and try to motivate them all the time with this business strategy or technology strategy. So it's important to know where you want to go, what are important to your team and to your organization, and find these people, the right people, and then encourage them.